Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's October 4th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And yesterday, once again, we thought maybe we might have a capitulation day when you see these real big sell-offs that get into very oversold territory like that. And today we finally got some follow-through. Does that mean we're found the bottom? Not necessarily, but it's looking that way. If we get some follow-through, buying tomorrow that gets back through this support that should try to act as resistance now, then we could get a bounce. I mean, we're way overdue for a bounce. We hadn't been back to the EMA, and uh, last time we touched the EMA was back up here on mid-September. So we haven't come back to the EMA in 3 weeks almost. So we're overdue for a bounce. We'll see what happens, but it's kind of looking like we may be. And I'm not saying this is a permanent bottom either, just maybe a temporary one, because we've definitely turned down and it's definitely bearish. But we're more than two legs down now. If we continue to go lower, maybe there's something bigger going on here. But I'm expecting that we're going to see some kind of correction here soon. It looks like maybe we're finally going to get it. We'll just have to see what happens. We'll see what tomorrow brings. But for now, let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart and take a look at it. It's a wild day, really, and we'll go through the trades and we'll wrap today up. And you can see we had this two-tiered blue channel working higher here. You really couldn't be certain on this channel until we started going higher, probably in here. That's when you could realize, hey, we're making higher highs, so we're probably going to try to make another leg up, which you can see we made a perfect measured leg up. We missed it by a couple of ticks. I mean, to me, that's a perfect measured leg, and then we sold off from there. So rather interesting. It's two legs up today in a two-tiered channel. Uh, we got a break here at a new high as well uh, on that measured move. Oh, that measured move up. So uh, let's zoom in here, go through the trades, and we'll wrap this day up. But actually, let me back up here before we zoom in. When we first broke out up here, you couldn't be sure this wasn't going to be a failed breakout, and it weren't going to be a range day. So there's some short, with all this played out, there's shorting possibilities here. So there's only a couple, and then we get back down here to the trend line. Then you got to be careful, and then suddenly we're going higher again, so you got to start buying again. But here we're in a downtrend, and we're looking for. I mean, it could be a range day, and even here it could still be a range day with a failed breakout. So just in case somebody's, because you hear me talk about don't counter trend trade and so forth, but once you get a confirmed trend reversal, you pretty much have to trade with the new trend. It all depends on, a lot of it's context of the chart. So um, it really depends. There were two news items, one at 7:15 and one around 9 o'clock this morning. So you had to be flat for a few minutes. 10 or 15 minutes going in. So you really couldn't trade. With this one being at 7:15, you really couldn't trade until maybe after 7:30 or so here. And so there's no real setups here to go long. And the next thing you know, we're rocketing down. But there's been no break of this green channel yet. So you really don't want to go short here anywhere. This is a failed second entry long. It's really tempting. But this early in the morning, I'd probably wait. There's a good chance we'll make a new low here. But this thing could just break lower and fail and turn up again. So I think it's too risky to go short there. And we do make a couple of swings down here and then find a bottom. And you could call that a triple test. And but this is a higher low all the same because we made the low and then you get the higher low. But we're also testing support and that's the third test of it. So I like going long there. That turns out to be a really nice move. Probably get a runner on that one. And then you get a first entry, second entry right here. That's not a great signal bar. It still looks like a couple legs back, but it looks kind of congested too. It looked real congested here, but here it's starting to kind of straighten out. So maybe you go along there. I marked it green. If that signal bar was a little better, I'd say jump on that one. But because it's also, we've tried to go lower once, twice, three times. It's not a perfect triple test, but it's still the same thing. We tested that EMA multiple times, and we pushed through it once, and then we couldn't get back through it again. We closed back above it. So there's a good chance if prices break higher, they're going higher. So on this second entry long, um, you really just need a good signal bar. And you could restart the count here. So if you got a little lower high or higher low or something here, or even a lower high, you could have still counted it as a second entry. But to me, that still looks like two clear legs back to the EMA. It's not a perfect two legs back either, so that's another reason I made that green. But there's reasons to like that trade, so maybe you take it. And then, of course, now you've got a leg up, two legs correction, another leg up with two legs in it, and then you turn down. I didn't mark this one, but I meant to at least mark it green. It's a lower high. We just barely made a new high here. Actually, I don't think we quite made a new high. Let me just look. Yeah, we did. We did make a new high here, just barely. Um, and it's not a second entry short. Technically it is a second entry short. Well, let me back up and just explain this. We made a double bottom right here, so this would still be a little higher or low, but all that looks similar to the same support to me. So you could count that. I mean, that generally looks like two legs up. So when it broke lower, you might count that as a second entry. Um, the problem is this is an inside bar and it doesn't have a matching high. So that really, but it does break higher first and fail and turn down. So that sets a new swing high here. So you could trade this bar. The other problem is I'm not sure. I think this broke higher and then turned down, but I wouldn't swear to that. And if it broke lower first, then you're trading off of this inside bar. If it broke higher first, then it's qualified, but I'd probably only trade it on the engulfing bar because when you get here, you don't have enough room to get out before the EMA. And there's a good chance it could bounce like it did these other times. So this trade has some things going for it, but it has some things working against it. The other thing is if you drew this trend channel and ran it up to the highs here, this doesn't quite get there. It's really early in this, and you're probably not looking for that channel yet. You're just looking at this one playing out and then starting a new one down maybe. And maybe it's going to be a range day. Maybe it's still going to be a bearish day. So this one's kind of leaves you hanging here. I marked it green, but there it is. We run on down, get a break, and this takes us into the 9 o'clock news item. Just kind of sit tight. And really by, say, 9:03, you could start trading again. So it just drops down here and we start working sideways. You get a little failed break out the bottom, failed break out the top. Normally I'd probably make that green because it makes a new high, but we're in a strong downtrend here. It's right off the EMA. It's right off the midline of that khaki channel. So the odds are it's probably going to come down here and make another leg down. Even if it just comes back to here, you got plenty of room. But sometimes you're going to be a little early there, and that's why a lot of times I'll mark that higher high green. But you've got that trend, that midline and the EMA, and a failed breakout in a strong downtrend. This downtrend is pretty strong already, so I kind of like that one. I marked it red. I liked it in real time. And then, of course, we bounce down here, and we just start working higher. I really don't see, you don't really want to go long down here, and I don't see anything to go short that really is worth risking. And then finally you get a first entry, and there's a second entry here. And this is close enough to be off the trend line. I could have my trend line drawn. It might be off just a hair. Either way, that's probably close enough. You like to see it touch it, but that's probably close enough. And you have to enter this on the engulfing portion. If you wait till this closes, it's too neutral. So if you don't enter on the engulfing portion of it, just sit tight. And if you do enter on the engulfing portion, your stop has to go here until this bar closes. Then you move your stop to one tick above it. It's not much difference in them. So, and that is a second entry short when it comes past that on the engulfing bar. And it turns out to make a pretty good move. I don't think you may not get a runner on that, depending on how you entered it on the engulfing bar, how you got filled. You probably don't get a runner on that. Then you get a clear first entry, second entry right here. That signal bar is a little questionable, so I marked it green. This has been a pretty bearish sell-off, and we should be trying to get back down here. So I like that one on just a second entry short, but you can see the new low, and you get a first entry, you try to go higher, you get a second entry, and we made a lower double top here, so you might even count that as a first entry, second entry failure with a continuation pattern. So that's another thing, way that you might look at that. But anyway, I didn't mark this. There's a hidden second entry in there too. So, but that double top gives you a new count there, and so you get a first entry, second entry, and then you got the hidden second entry. So really, you know, depending on how you're looking at this, you might take that trade. You're better off to wait on the lower high, just to make sure prices are definitely going lower. And of course, it runs down, finds some support, and suddenly it rallies out of there. You can see that, and you get a first entry, second entry. Now, normally you wouldn't be looking for a second entry here. That's not why I marked this green. The reason I marked this green is because you got a new low here, and you try to go lower once, then it comes higher and tries to go lower twice and breaks. You got that 3-bar matching low. That's your first clue. Don't go short there on that second entry. I don't even know if it works. I don't think there's enough room there. That's another thing before that EM. But normally you wouldn't worry too much about the EMA. I mean, you see it doesn't quite have enough room there. If you came straight down, maybe it does, just barely. And so you don't know how it's going to work out. So I would say sit tight on that trade because of those 3-bar matching lows and see what happens. And when it breaks lower, and this breaks lower and fails and turns up and goes out the other side all in one bar, and creates a second entry long after one strong leg up, the odds are you're going to get an attempt at another leg. And you probably have the shorts trapped. And you can tell because look how it rockets up. And then when all the stops are run, it kind of peters out. And the next thing you're running down again. And you would expect a retest of the lows here on this khaki channel. So I like that as a trap. Nothing more, not because it's a second entry long, because you certainly wouldn't be looking for a second entry long there. This is just a little surprise trap, and what would keep you out of the short was just making notice of those 3-bar matching lows. It looks, by the time this closes, it looks like congestion because you got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars stacked side by side. One of them has a very tiny body. That's congestion. Again, there's no rule that says you can't enter out of congestion, but most new traders, if you see congestion, and again, congestion is anytime you see 3 or more bars stacked side by side, at least one of them is a doji or has a very tiny body like this and lots of stems or on both sides, that's congestion. And what happens with congestion was even if prices don't rocket higher like this, when they break out of it, congestion is nothing more than a miniature range, a micro range. And when prices break out of a range, what is our rule? All breakouts fail, even if only just temporarily, they fail. So you can get whipsawed by that failure. And you see right here, it breaks out of congestion, fails, and whips right back up and would have stopped you out. But it also creates a strong short trap, and you see how it rockets up real quick. Well, that's because of that trap, and because a lot of people start short covering that were getting short in here, and they realize they're on the wrong side and they have to get out, or they lose their shirt. So, and then also people think, okay, well the trend's turning, and so it picks up a little momentum by new buyers coming in as well, and then within a few minutes it peters out, and next thing you know, boom, and they're all trapped, and they all the longs that came in here, everybody, they all have to exit, and it comes right back to where it was. So be careful on these. Watch that congestion, and until you get to be a really good chart reader, just skip congestion. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache, a lot of headaches, and a lot of losing trades. And it's just as simple as that. And this is just more congestion right here. And normally I like to use the bodies like so. And you can see you have a little failed breakout. You have a breakout. What happens again? It fails. It's only temporary failure, but it fails. And it would have stopped you out. And if you notice, if you do a measured move, I think you can see it gets a perfect measured move there. It's tempting to go long there. And you are expecting a retest of the high, but it's just a first entry. If you draw your little trend channel, it's probably going to say, hey, you can't go long yet. Let's make this one a different color. And you can see there, it's all that still. But you get two quick legs up after the break of this green channel, and boom, it turns down. Again, you got a failed breakout. I like this one to go short. Again, it makes a new high, so it's a little bit dangerous, and it gets much more than a measured move here. Probably because a bunch of shorts, people went short right here, and they had to cover. It's really another short trap right there. And then you don't see the actual counts, but you still get a leg up, first entry, leg up, second. If you went to a slider chart, there's a second entry short right there. So maybe you take that trade. If you want to be a little aggressive, that's the one to take. There's a lower high here that breaks higher and turns down. The problem is, once again, you may be back in this range, and you see it is right to that low, although we've already broke out, and that usually cleans it out. But it's a little dangerous right there. There's not much room to the EMA. It could bounce off the EMA, which it does, and then it turns back down. But notice you got a new high, and you get a first entry long, you get a second entry long, and it instantly fails and turns down and goes out the other side. I like going short. It was a failure when it went below this red bar. But what I would do is wait for this to close. Actually, I take that back. It actually broke lower and turned up and then came back down. So the entry would be one tick below the green bar. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, describing this wrong. But this actually broke lower, failed, turned up, went out the other side. Don't get fooled on the long there, for sure. And then suddenly it just turns down. This would be your signal bar anyway, and it never triggers. But I guarantee you, some of you try to sneak in a little early and then you get burned here. Don't do that. So when it broke below this green bar, that's a failed second entry long. It's going to trap people. It's a reversal pattern, basically. Usually you like to see it on the other side of the EMA, but it does. But this one, if it goes that far past and ticks past that, it's going to probably drop on down. And so I like that one. It's not a typical failure, but it's like a failed breakout of the range. It's 3 attempts to go higher. And this bar, when it breaks through, it closes very bearish. It's all good signs. You could actually enter under this bar if you wanted to. I don't really like going short at the low of a move. If it's a trap, maybe. But I just generally don't like those. But because this is setting up as a reversal and you just got some congestion and stuff, it's probably okay because the market's probably trying to reverse, but there's still a little momentum from this buying coming in here, and it just takes a minute for that to kind of wane and play on out, and then suddenly everybody realizes they're on the wrong side, and boom. We run down here, we work back up. There's another second entry short here. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry. I'd probably count that as a new low, and the second entry right here. I didn't mark it because, again, it looks like congestion. And we got the close outside, but we didn't get the new high yet. And you see when it broke lower there, it kind of came back because most breakouts fail, but it was only a temporary failure, and then it went on lower. So that's why you can't take that trade, and it could have gone higher. It doesn't. But you can't bank on that. So it's not a sure thing, so I didn't mark it. I didn't even like it for green. I wouldn't take that trade. Breaks higher here, turns back down, and then we bounce right off that trend line, but I don't see any setups there. There's nothing I'd risk going on. This bar is probably only 6 ticks, but it looks congested. Um, it's real tempting, but there's not much room to the EMA, and look how the EMA has been holding all the way across there. If you turn down there, you're in trouble. There's not enough room to get out, so I'd skip that trade. And it just takes off, and I don't see anything else in here all the way up. I mean, if you realize this, hey, this is looking pretty strong again right here. We might get a measured move. Maybe you risk going long right here. It's a possibility. It's your first break, but we're not back to the EMA, so you could easily tick higher and come back to the EMA. I just think it's too risky. Runs on up. You get a break, and you think you're going to reverse here, but you just start working sideways. Too much congestion, and finally you get a little failed break lower here out of that little congestion, and you get a triple bottom with a nice signal bar. If it breaks above that, it's probably going to run back to the high, so I like that one. I didn't mark this one either, but looking at it, it's only 6 ticks. It makes a new high, but it closes back inside. So, and it's only 6 ticks. And this green one's played out here. The only problem is we don't have a measured move by any. We're not even close yet, but we're definitely working sideways. And you look how many times you've turned down there, and there is room back to the EMA. So maybe you take that trade. There's actually a second entry short here where it makes the 2-bar matching low, so that's like a high or low. And when it breaks below that, it's a second entry, but I wouldn't risk that one. Now you got congestion there. But when you just have this bar, you've only got 2 bars, and this is a tiny, I mean, it's very low risk if you are wrong. So maybe you take it there, but after that, you can't take it. Then it comes down here and it breaks out. It makes a new low, so again, you're better off to wait on the higher low. And so I did not mark this one, or I didn't mark it blue. I just marked it green because you may consider taking that trade. Then of course it runs up and gives a move back and gives you a higher low, and it's also a new high right there. First entry, second entry. We're not really looking for second entries here, but if you see one, maybe you take it. So you got a second entry long, you got a higher low after a failed breakout. And the reason I like these sometimes is because they're often important lows, and you can see we rocketed up and went a good bit higher. So if you caught that trade, a lot of times you'll get a runner on these and they just take off. This one didn't do that. I did mark the higher low because it closed just above the midline there. Problem with this one, and actually it's a little more than that because my high is not quite right there. Because it's a first entry, second entry, and it's a higher low. It's congested though. So for that reason, instead of making this blue, I made it green because it's still a little bit. But you can see we've been going from low to high to low to high to low. So we're probably going back to the high. We may even go higher. We still don't have a new high after this break of this green channel. Actually, we do. We had the break and new high here. I was thinking we didn't make a new high, but we did. But it takes off, and you don't know that it's going to do this, but it does. Comes back here, just first entry, still in that down channel. We're just kind of chopping higher here. You might measure your 2 legs here and look for where your measured move might go to. I don't know if we don't even quite make it. We get close right there. We don't quite make it. But anyway, I think that was that the one we were on? Yeah, that one's kind of risky there. It broke lower and turned up and went higher. So, or we were talking about this one, but I just wouldn't short it. Then you get 2 legs down, and this breaks lower, fails, turns up, and it's in like an engulfing bar. If you enter on the engulfing bar, maybe you're okay. I don't think I'll wait until this closes. It's a pretty bullish bar, but you can see the congestion here. And it is right off the midline. It's just the first test. It's a second entry. You do have a break and a new low. There's reasons to like that one, but I mean, it's starting to look like congestion there. And you do get a higher low here. The only reason I marked this one blue is because it's a repeat pattern. It looks just almost exactly like this one. And there was another one somewhere back here. I don't remember exactly where. But it definitely looks like exact repeat of that. And it takes, so it's probably worth risking. And then, of course, now you got a leg up, a correction, second leg up, and it comes back again. And no setup here. Runs to the high, turns back down. There's actually a little channel coming back down. And again, we don't get a break and a new low or anything. It just bounces there and takes off. So I don't think you want to go long right there. It's just a first entry. There is a lower high here, so it would be a second entry when it goes above that. But that's an inside bar. I don't like entering on those. And it's a doji too. High or low here. Failed second entry short, but that's not where you're looking for one. And then it turns back down again. So this is, I mean, we're swinging back and forth above and below the EMA. So you can almost trade those, but we're so close to that measured move, and there's no close outside and new high of this yet. So I'm wary of going short there. Lower high here, but look, it looks real congested. And we just kind of chop lower, and then it bounces, and you think we're going to go higher. You do get a close outside here, but there's still a good test. We're going to retest the high and try to get that measured move. So you can't really enter here. And then suddenly you get a second entry long right here. Notice there's a new high. By the counts, it's a first entry, second entry. To me, it only looks like one leg down. But when it breaks higher and fails, that's a trap. If it goes out that other side, go with it. You'll at least get a scalp out of that, even if it's going to go higher. Your expectations, you'll get a scalp out of that. This thing just keeps chopping lower. There's another first entry, second entry, but it's this inside bar. It's not a great signal bar either. Then it comes back with two legs up, so you get another second entry right here, but now you got a 1, 2, 3 triple test. It's a second entry short. It confirms that key entry point. It's already had more than 2 swings touch it there, so this just further confirms it. Go short right there. I mean, that's a nice second entry short. And look at it go. Close outside new low, and then we kind of chop sideways thinking we're heading back over here, but it breaks lower. You can see this dash line across here is a measured move equal to that. We move down, we get moved 2 legs down. I don't see anything that makes me want to go short there though, and I don't want to buy now because we're in this downtrend. And but when we make that measure move, we just bounce along down there. That one is real tempting, but you're just trying to pick a bottom here. It's not really a high or low because you had those 3-bar match and it made a little bit lower low. So I just say wait. And you get 2 legs up and it turns down here. Unfortunately, it doesn't break lower there on your second entry. You get an inside bar and then it breaks lower. Makes another new low here and bounces. And we run straight up. That's a good sign. When that thing runs right on up, goes through the EMA, it makes a higher high than the previous one, comes back, and suddenly takes off, makes another leg up, and you pull back here. The reason I marked this green is you've clearly got 2 legs up already. They're not quite measured, but there's a leg up, correction, leg up, and then we try to go lower here twice. There's really 3 times there we tried to go lower, so there's a little bit of a triple test. It's not like an ideal triple test, but we tested that low area right there 3 times and failed to go any lower, and it's a failed second entry short. As soon as it breaks higher than the last swing low, which is here, because we haven't broke higher yet. So when it breaks higher here, it's a failure. So maybe you take that on the failure and the triple test and the nice signal bar. It looks like it's going to be a trap at first, but then it takes on off. I marked it green just because it looks a little congested too, so maybe that's a good enough reason to skip it. But it takes on off, comes back, you get a close outside, and then it rallies off again. But there's no real, there's a hidden second entry there. So if you see that, the problem is there's not much room to that high. It doesn't mean we're not going to go higher still. You could argue for that to be green, but I really don't like it. It's kind of a repeat here though too, because you got a new low and you run up and you try to go lower twice there. It's a little bit different because this is mostly sideways and this is still trending down. But you can see that new low that runs up real fast and you try to go lower and it doesn't break higher and then it goes lower again, just like it does right here. So it's a little bit of a repeat pattern. We had two measured legs up a little more than that, but that's the first break of that green channel. We're going to probably retest that regardless. So maybe you take that. That's such a nice bullish bar. Maybe you take that. And if you do, you get paid off handsomely for it. But it's aggressive, so you got to tell yourself that it's not always worth taking, because if it fails, then you lost and you didn't get that nice move up. But if you took this trade, maybe you even get a runner on it. Comes back to the trend line again here, but it's sideways and congested. Notice when it breaks out, it fails and comes back again, just like it almost always does, and that takes us into 230. So there it is. Pretty busy day. Mostly uphill, although there were two decent trends down. And there were some good trades to the downside. There's a couple later here, and there were a few here early when it looked like it might be a range day or a reversal day. But anyway, we're up to 31 minutes, so I like to keep these things under 30 minutes as much as I can. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, so that'll wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays. Hope everybody had a good trading day. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you.